Hello, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another session of dtalks on literacy numeracy, that is, disruptive talks on literacy and numeracy. And I am your host, Anupma Mahajan, and we have with us a very special guest, Mr. Carly Woodward, and he will
Hello.
be discussing a lot on how to upskill early literacy in a fun way. So all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Certainly not with Mr. Carly Woodward around, who has done huge work in upskilling early literacy in a fun way and making all the learning fun for Jack. A little something, a little few words about our guests. So, Mr. Carly Woodward, since 2003, he has been on an 18-year quest to eradicate literacy in the United States and English literacy, illiteracy throughout the world through his work running the American Youth Literacy Foundation. Wow. He was an ESL instructor in Bogota, Colombia, when he was 19 years old, and then as an Arabic and Spanish translator for the 101st Airborne Division, U.S. Army Intelligence, F.T. Campbell, KY, then as a law student at UCLA Law, and then as a co founder and executive at three separate telecom companies. He was also an entrepreneur running an after school enrichment program for the gifted children, and then as a stay at home dad, homeschooling his son, who was an 8-year old second grader, was having extreme difficulty learning how to read, and finally, as a reading expert and founder and director of the American Youth Literacy Foundation. In March 2012, his foundation was awarded a patent on a literacy solution that had eluded teachers and learners of written English for nearly 1,000 years. That solution is called Phonetics, a simple but comprehensive and transformational application of the ancient diacritic method to English. Phonetics, which is the early phonemic awareness and decoding piece of the larger learn to read equation, and its standalone solution that's also compatible with any phonics based curriculum. So over to Mr. Woodward, who would tell us more about how he got through this organization, his journey, and more about phonetics.
Thank you, Anupama. Uh, Thank you, everyone who is watching live or who sees this video later. It's a wonderful opportunity for us at the American Youth Literacy Foundation to share what we've been doing with your audience and with the world. I think the time is ripe for collaboration between groups all over the world to bring this literacy crisis to an end. We've been working on it, as you said, for 18 years, and I want to share our journey. So I'll bring up our slideshow. Now, let me make sure that I get this right here. Here we go. And you should be able to see that now. Does that look good? You can see the screen, just confirming. Anupama.
I can see the screen. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So this is the journey of phonetics. So 18 years ago, I had a personal literacy crisis. My wife and I, our family, my eldest son was turning 8. He's a little younger here, but he was basically a normal kid, turning 8, going into second grade. And for some reason or another, he just wasn't understanding how to read, and he couldn't read a sentence. The school had tried to work with him. We tried to get evaluations, assessments, did all the things that parents typically do, but it just wasn't catching on. So essentially, my wife and I made the decision to take him out of school, and I homeschooled him for a year to teach him how to read. Now, my background was as an ESL instructor in Bogota, Colombia, as Anupama mentioned. I then went on to become a Spanish and Arabic translator for the U.S. Army. So I felt when I took him out of school that I could figure out how to teach him how to read. So that was partly what prompted me. I think a lot of other parents don't feel like they have the talent, the skill, the understanding. And so they feel stuck, but we'll get to that a little bit more later. Now, Arabic, and this is something that maybe some of you are familiar with. Arabic is an ancient language over about 5,000 years old. When it was originally created, they had no vowels. They had long vowels, but not short vowels. So now, after 4,000 years, basically, they decided to add back the vowels so that people could understand better how to pronounce some of the names and some of the words. It was difficult to read because it was simply a series of consonant strings. So these little marks that you see above Arabic words are basically their short vowel sounds. So they're called diacritics, diacritic vowels. So I wanted to go through a quick thought experiment with you that I think you'll enjoy. And feel free to speak out, Anupama, if you want. Otherwise, I'll keep going, but there are some questions in here. So this is what English might look like to children before they learn the rules of reading. So my first question would be, do you know what this word says? If you consider words like thought, people, night, ocean, the, ball, once, of, these are all words that we look at and obviously understand. However, even easy decodable words, as in the sentence, the fat cat sat on the mat, probably look like this to a new reader. Many of these words are called sight words, but for the new reader, it's not clear what the sounds are in those words. So they might know some of these consonant sounds, but the vowels are really confusing, or in many cases, the digraphs, the THs, the CHs, they don't make sense to young novel readers. Phonetics is a simple pictographic support system that helps these readers learn phonics, phonemic awareness, and basic decoding skills by revealing the hidden sounds in every word. So here's basically how it works. And this is what when I sat down with my son and I said, well, how's a kid supposed to know that, for instance, the O-U-R in for sounds like or, but the O-R-E in store sounds like or the O-A-R in board sounds like or, et cetera, et cetera. I said, well, why don't I just do what they did in the Arabic language and give you a diacritic that shows you? So I underlined the O-U-R in for. I put a little symbol. I said, if you see the for symbol, that means that letter string sounds like or. So whether it's O-U-R, O-R, O-O-R, the underline and the diacritic will tell you what that sounds like. And basically the light bulb went on. Everything made sense, and my son learned how to read in 6 weeks. And that was the beginning. That was 18 years ago. But we'll continue with this thought experiment. So that's the basic concept of applying the diacritic method to English, which is really what my insight was when I was struggling to teach my son. So I created this aliens just to give you a sense of what it would be like to be a new reader. So the idea is, can you read these words from alien speak that are basically nonsense words using the same diacritic method? And then, as you see at the bottom, it should say Zor, drawer, Zor, drawer, floor, pour, and born. Actually, this one says door because all three are underlined. So this construction is kind of crazy, but that's what English is to kids. Now, if you use I'll add another symbol here. This is the I symbol, sounds like I is in the word pie. So now that you have the diacritic method and the symbols you need, can you tell me what this word is? So I'll ask you in real time, but if you don't answer, I'll tell you. So this word says four-eye guy. So this is the four-eye guy. He's the alien with the four eyes. And then the last slide from this thought experiment is Alien Storytime Chapter 1. This is the first sentence of the book. I'll give you an opportunity to try to figure out what that says. And the answer is four-eye guys meet a five-eye guy. So that's how diacritics works, and that's how it's applied to English. And here's how it's applied to alien speak. It could be applied to other languages as well. So this was the beginning. Obviously, the diacritic method, as I mentioned, helped my son learn how to read in 6 weeks. But we started to realize that, first of all, I had to ask myself, well, how many sounds are there in the English language? It's something that no one learns in school, which never made sense to me. It's still not taught in America's schools. There are approximately 44 sounds in the English language. We use 44. There's some debate among academics. But this is what we've settled on. This is what we've learned over many, many years, is the needed phonemes in order to teach kids how to read. So these are the 44 sounds of English. And this is the pronunciation guide for these additional, we use 19 letters from the alphabet, and these are an additional 25 symbols, 25 sound symbols that we use. And then the silent Saturn, as you'll see in a little bit, is another diacritic we added to use to show silent letters. So once I taught my son how to read, I realized that I had stumbled onto something that potentially could teach millions of kids how to read. And we all know the crisis, but I didn't know the crisis of literacy at the time. I came to find out that hundreds of millions of children around the world couldn't read, that at least 20 million children in America's public schools couldn't read, even though if they had gone through 7th, 8th, 9th grade and then dropped out. So 24% of all kids who go through America's public schools drop out. Most of them drop out in 9th grade, and primarily because they can't read. So that's 1 million children a year dropping out completely illiterate and going into American society without any skills whatsoever. The COVID-19 has only exacerbated the problem. The time that was lost by millions of children, especially underserved, underprivileged kids who were at home without Chromebooks, without any kind of device, millions of them didn't even sign on and have any opportunity for virtual learning. So the gap between those kids and the fact that they were unable to do any kind of learning for a year just exacerbated the problem. And especially the 1st and 2nd grade kids who were just starting to learn how to read were set back by at least a year, maybe more. And the challenge in low-income communities, obviously, is much, much greater. They typically have had pre-COVID low literacy scores, low math scores, high dropout rates. But during COVID, we realized they also lacked Wi-Fi in many cases, ed tech devices of some sort, and reduced opportunity for support in the home. The United States puts out what's called the Nation's Report Card every year, and the numbers are staggering, but I'll just explain this chart a little bit. This is the 4th grade reading achievement and the 8th grade. The way they show the numbers, and these are the years leading up to, this stops at 2011, but the way they show the numbers, this dark blue area is advanced and the light blue here is proficient. But this 67%, they don't break down into what's called basic and below basic. And I've done that here on the side. So I've broken that down into the basic and below basic. Below basic is essentially completely illiterate. And basic is considered functionally illiterate. They can't read chapter books. They can't fill out job applications. They can't fill out medical forms. So when you add those two together, you're looking at more than, or approximately, or close to 2/3 of all the students in America's public schools are functionally or completely illiterate. And that statistic just floored me when I started learning about the crisis and I realized what I had been able to accomplish with my son. As soon as I finished 1 year of homeschool with my son, I began teaching kids all around the Philadelphia. I'm in Philadelphia. I began teaching kids all around the area, and we started building curriculum and started seeing the same results. So in 2008, 5 years after developing curriculum, we decided it was time to scale. We started a tutoring program, and within a year we had 16 chapters in Philadelphia and central New Jersey. And we were training tutors on the curriculum we had developed, and we were certifying them and sending them out to after school programs where they would sit down with kids who were struggling and teach them how to read using phonetics. In 2012, we earned a patent on the system, which is a diacritic decoding system as applied to English. It's comprehensive. It captures every sound of the language, and it basically can reveal every sound in any word in the English language. It took us 9 years to get the patent, but we finally got that in 2012. 2012 was also when we went nationwide with our tutoring program. So the idea of scaling has always been from the beginning. Once I realized what this system was capable of, and once I started to realize how large the literacy crisis was, the idea was, how do we scale this to reach the millions and millions of kids? And the reason I have these particular gentlemen on the screen and a picture of a hurricane is because one of my other passions happens to be neuroscience and nonlinear mathematics. And I wrote a book on those subjects for young adults called You Can't Bend a Spoon, but You Can Bend the Universe. And Buckminster Fuller was, many of you probably know who he was, but he was one of the systems theory specialists, and he created essentially the geodesic dome. But this particular quote from him made a lot of sense to me and still does, and I've been following this concept for years now. And he said, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And so what I realized early on was that our model of early literacy decoding was the model that needed to be inserted into the early literacy curricula of America's schools in order to change the way that kids mastered those early skills like phonemic awareness and decoding, and could move on to learning how to read and mastering reading. Ilya Prigogine was a Nobel laureate chemist who invented the concept of dissipative structures, also called dissipative systems far from equilibrium, and essentially overturned 300 years of thermodynamics law, in that he showed that the universe does not tend towards entropy, but rather towards order, in the sense that energy wants to coagulate, it wants to spin. And from his work in dissipative systems, there evolved another whole field of dissipative social systems. And dissipative social systems are the sense that everything in the human world, everything in our socioeconomic world and our geopolitical world, all the organizations are actually moving according to these laws of nonlinear mathematics, which is they're basically these systems that want to spin. So a dissipative system is something that is dissipating something out, a good or product or a service, and it's pulling energy in order to do that. So everything in the universe, whether it's a galaxy or whether it's a hurricane or whether it's the little eddy in your bathtub when you pull the drain, everything spins, and these social structures spin. And whether it's an organization, whether it's a company, whether it's a religion, whether it's a family, everything is organized, and in this invisible way, it's basically pulling energy in and dissipating something out. And so when we decided to build the solution to the literacy crisis, we realized we needed to build something extremely large that would have an impact on an education system that is $1 trillion education system that has an enormous amount of inertia, and that the only way we could make an impact is if we built something big enough to make an impact. And so at the center of our dissipative structure that we call phonetics is the system itself, the decoding system, the diacritic decoding method. And we call this a benevolent hurricane. So essentially, we're pulling energy in, and we are sending out this opportunity, this product, this app that I'll talk about in a minute. But it requires an enormous amount of energy to be pulled in order to grow large enough to make an impact on something as large as the American education system or the global education system. But even more so, it's all about trying to solve an intractable problem. So there are many human intractable problems, and education and literacy is one of them. And I personally believe, and continue to believe, that building what we call benevolent hurricane is the way to solve intractable problems, with the cause being at the center, in the eye of this benevolent hurricane. So after many years of tutoring and getting feedback from the field and iterating and clinical trials and research, we felt that we had built, and we started to see that kids everywhere could learn how to read in 12 hours. And we felt that we had enough data to move forward to digitize the app, digitize the curriculum, and create an app, because the app really became the thing that we knew could scale, that could reach the millions of kids. And the app can go viral. The app is already being downloaded around the world. And so we started the tutoring program and the foundation, prior to even the smartphone being in existence. But it's been a wonderful convergence of technology in the sense that now we can reach the millions of kids. So this is the new model for early literacy. This was the original alpha prototype. We put it in the hands of kids around the country, and we let them play with it. We built 3 modules of the 40, and we started testing it using, we built it using a rapid prototyping tool that could be used on any smartphone, and we started testing it, getting feedback. And then in 2019, we started building our team. So we built a team of 100 people to create this app. And we outsourced our engineering, but other than that, it was all volunteers. So we had our curriculum specialists and our designers and our engineers and our UX, UI people, and a bunch of other teams that we put together. We have 12 teams, and we created the app. We created 100 screens per week throughout 2020 during the heart of the pandemic. And we were working virtually through Slack, through Zoom conferences, through Google Shared folders, and we got it done. And by Thanksgiving of 2020, we had the Android version of the app up in the Google Play Store. In January, we put the Apple version in the App Store, and last July, we put the Kindle version in the Amazon Kindle App Store. So now we have our new UI, the background, and the new look and feel, and kids ages 5 to 9 essentially can download the app, use the app, learn how to read in 12 hours. So let me take you through how the app works. We introduce the 44 phonemes, and immediately we start teaching the concept of blending. So the letter C makes the K sound, and the star symbol makes the R sound, which is one of the 4 R-controlled vowels in American English: R, and OR. So the star makes the R sound. So when you put those 2 sounds together, K and R, you get the word car. And each screen is interactive. Every screen is narrated. There's lots of animation, but it's not a video game so much as a gamified reading curriculum. It's 40 modules long. It's over 2,300 individual screens, and it's all interactive. So the students make a choice on every screen. So on this screen, the narrator says, does this word say car? And they press the check or the X. We introduced the idea of 3 phoneme words very quickly, in the sense that we add an ending consonant sound here. So the word bar would become barn. And then we progressed to teaching them how to read all the symbols in a phonetic code, essentially a phonetic English code called 21E or Kinder code. And this is a very simple code for the kids. We teach them progressively from words to simple sentences. This sentence here says I, if you remember the I from the alien speak. The eagle makes the E sound, so this says I see. This is the umbrella, and that makes the sound. I see and the dot says so this says I see a fox, and this says I see a fish. This is the igloo, and this is the ship. The ship represents the SH digraph, or the sh sound in English. So the symbols actually based off of the ancient Phoenician code, which was created thousands of years ago. The symbols use a mnemonic device that embeds the sound in every symbol. So the I says I, the eagle says E, the umbrella says the dot says the igloo says I, and the ship says sh. So that makes it very, very easy for kids to learn all the symbols and start reading phonetic English in 3 hours. And then we introduce the symbols in the diacritic form, and we underline the phonograms or the phonics constructions, and we show them, like I did with my son, that if you see an underline that tells you to look above at the diacritic, that will tell you what the letter string sounds like. And what I realized is this is where I started with my son, with the basic diacritic concept. But then as we built out the curriculum, we realized we needed to basically back up and go all the way to the beginning, which is teaching the phonemes, teaching the basic concepts of blending those phonemes, and then mastering the ability to read a phonetic code before we transition to English and all the confusing letter combinations. At module 12, which is about 3.5 hours in, we start with early primers. So this is a kindergarten level primer, and we're able to use real speech, and words that kids know, and we don't have to use decodable, quote unquote, words like cat sat on the mat. Kids on average come to first grade with about a 20,000 word working vocabulary of both active and passive words, and they anything that they understand, we basically can write in our app. So that's one of the reasons why the traditional phonics curriculum is stifled or stymied, because it can only use decodable words. It can't show the silent E, for instance. It wouldn't show the word dog because of the irregular pronunciation of the O. Or in this case, love, because of the irregular pronunciation of the O as well. So this says, I love my dog, and the paw says aw. So here we don't have to underline if it's just a single letter. We just put the symbol on top. So that's how that would look. And then a few modules later, this is module 16, which is less than halfway in to the app. They're starting to read much more sophisticated first grade books. And then this is module 34, and this is a story about Bill the Bear. He came to a small house in the woods, and he went inside. We also introduced, this is a learning support tool called the Magic Hat button, and we create the button to enable kids to click on it and show the diacritic. So as they progress through these more and more difficult stories, if they come across words they don't remember, they can push this Magic Hat button and the diacritics pop up. So that's how that works. The diacritics pop up, they stay up for 10 seconds, allowing them to decode that particular word. Then they go off, and then if they need a little more time, they can push it again. The diacritics pop up, and they can see the pronunciation guide. And that's really what phonetics is. It's an inline pronunciation guide, and we teach the kids all the symbols, and we teach them how to blend and read phonetic English. We transition them to English with diacritics, and then we wean them off of words after multiple impressions, because they no longer need the diacritics. That's actually how Arabic works, how Hebrew works. Farsi, they teach kids how to read with the diacritics, but then they wean them off the diacritics as they become familiar with the words. We also have the 21E button, and that's if they want to see the entire sentence in the phonetic code. so they can go back to that to reference as well. And then we have in-house, we have a UX team of about 9 people. We continue to do clinical research trials using user testing software called Loop 11, which allows us to capture the front-facing video as well as the screen clicks. And I'll play a few videos, and you can see kids progressing through the app. And this is about 2.5 hours in, and he's starting to build his phonemic awareness and learning to blend simple words.
What's the word herd? Like a herd of sheep. A herd is a group of sheep. They stay together in a herd. Nice job. This is the check symbol. The check symbol makes the ch sound, as in the word cheese or chair. When you blend the ch sound together with the air sound, you make the word chair.
Yeah, if you notice, that boy really picked up on that concept. When he started, he couldn't read at all, and he really picked up on the concept of blending. You heard him put those two sounds together, ch and air. Lots of those wonderful moments of insight, and that's what we want. We want them to kind of understand that reading is nothing more than blending sound symbols together to form words. Those words have meaning, and then when you blend words together, you form sentences, and you can discover the meaning in the sentences. The decoding piece is actually more aligned with English, because English is so complex and has these multi-letter phonograms that it's harder to figure out where the pieces are. So this is where we begin teaching with diacritics and showing them how to decode independently to find the pieces and then blend the pieces together. And so here's one of our students doing that.
Now let's go on another treasure hunt. I wonder what the treasure is this time. Read the clue and do what it says to find the treasure. Touch the large animal. Read the clue and do what it says. Touch the sour fruit. Touch the read the clue and do what it says.
A little bit of feedback from parents.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like when we started it was, I mean, we can even go back to just the assessment. It was so hard for her to just understand basic words like car and bar and, you know, things like that you would think, okay, a first grader should know in English. So I feel like now she's able to read, you know, books in English, and she may have a few questions on some of the words, but yeah, she can read.
I've never seen, like, I think it's interesting, like, especially when I saw it, there was a J with the star, a jar. But for him, I think that's great because he's more visual. Like, he likes symbols, he likes shapes, words. It just jumbles them all up. You know, like, he knows his name and he knows certain letters of the alphabet. But I know before, like, I had contacted you about being part of the program. I like downloaded the app, and I was playing with it, and I thought he wasn't listening, like he wasn't playing around. I was like, oh, this is cool. And then it came to the part where I think we had to pick between jar and something else. And he's not even looking, but then he looks and he gets jar. Like, and I'm like, that never happens. So we tried hooked on phonics, we tried ABC Mouth.
And one more.
It's like I kind of see what they're doing here. Like at first I was like, I don't understand how this is gonna work, but now I do. It's almost like other languages where they have symbols. They have more letters than we do, and the symbols are representing sounds that we would just combine letters to make those sounds. So I think that he really, for some reason, he's really gravitated to that. Like that really helps him.
I even like to
Look at the symbols above if that helps you.
watch basketball. I forgot what that doing.
Sound it out. You just sound it out. Put the sounds together.
On TV.
Yes.
The end.
I'm supposed to teach him to, and it was like yesterday he kind of made the connection. Like, oh, this is teaching me how to read. Yeah, and it's like, yeah.
So the app is built, and our goal now is to get the word out, get the app out. It's free, 100% free. There's no sign up, there's no login, there's no in-app purchases. The goal is to get the app out to as many people around the world as possible. And we are embarking on another way of getting the app out, which is to actually give devices to kids who can't afford them, who don't have them. So we are giving away 21,000 Kindle Fire tablets to underprivileged children who are struggling with reading, to families and to schools around the country and around the world. Actually, we're working with a group out of Australia to potentially launch the program down there, and opened other opportunities to launch the program. The part of the program is to have liaisons who are in communication and stay in touch with the families as the child goes through the app. We don't want to just give Kindles away unsupported, so we have people volunteering to check in with the families every 2 to 3 weeks, to be able to answer questions, provide feedback, give feedback to us, and literacy partners and sponsors. In order for this to be possible, it's all about bringing in other nonprofits, corporations, in order to purchase the Kindles and place the Kindles. So we are working with and talking to a lot of different potential partners. The app was premiered or shown on the Tamron Hall show, and that was before Christmas. We gave 60 of these Kindles to a school in Illinois, and this is the little bit of that.
How passionate you are about the schools in your local community, so we want to help out as well. Starting with Century Elementary School, all 3 of your sons went there, and on your behalf, we are giving the school 60 brand new Fire tablets that are preloaded with the new 12-hour reading app. It's called Phonetics, the groundbreaking free app that helps 5 to 9-year-old kids perfect their reading skills and works on any mobile device and can teach virtually any child how to read from the ABCs to the 2nd grade reading level.
So that's the partnership we're trying to develop between liaisons, obviously supporting parents, giving the app to schools, having volunteers from high schools and colleges to help with the community work and reaching out to partners and sponsors. We have opportunities to, each of our sponsors and are included in our media, traditional media, social media, press releases, etc. Our message is that literacy, lifelong literacy, is only 12 hours away. And we hope that people will plug in phonetics. It's the early literacy piece that's missing of the puzzle, and it makes phonemic awareness and decoding incredibly easy for kids as a standalone app or as a part of a larger phonics curriculum in virtually any classroom. So that is the story of phonetics, the 12-hour reading app, and a little bit about the American Youth Literacy Foundation. And that is all.
Oh, wow. So that was an amazing presentation, and what a win-win way of getting children to learn within 12 hours of teaching. It is really amazing. Now, we would have a few questions for you. I'll just be there with you. And the first question is that, what has been your inspiration behind your work in the field of education for all?
Yeah, it started with my son, and just knowing that as a parent, my responsibility was to make sure that he became educated. I mean, that's the ticket to a life in the modern world. And so reading is the foundation of all education. So when we started seeing that he was being really challenged, we really had to step in. Once I helped him, as I mentioned, I started realizing how many millions of kids couldn't read. And prior to that, I'd actually had a company that was working with gifted and talented kids after school and teaching them all about neuroscience and nonlinear mathematics. And everything changed when my son couldn't read, because I realized that there are so many millions of kids who don't even have the basic skills. And so that's been my life mission. The thing is, if reading is only 12 hours away, that we found working with thousands of kids, then there's no reason every child in America and every child in the world shouldn't be able to learn how to read. So
Great.
it just makes too much sense. And I couldn't walk away from that, even though I thought it was going to happen a lot sooner. But for whatever reason, here we are 18 years later, and probably a few more years to go. But it's all coming together.
Oh, awesome. It's been a great journey. Very, very inspiring. Upskilling is the new normal of education. Please share your view on this.
So I think a lot of children are missing that basic literacy skill. So obviously there's a lot of attention being paid to things like STEM and STEAM and technology literacy, and certainly that all makes sense. But the way we see the world, all of us, we see what's close to us and we see what's in front of us, and so it's often easy to overlook when we look at programs for getting kids upskilled in technology. It's often easy for us to forget the fact that there are millions of kids who can't even read. So they're not even in the game. And that's really, I feel like the primary upskilling should be literacy, should be reading. And we should be pushing towards 100% literacy rate. Very few countries in the world have a 100% literacy rate. Finland is one of them. They're very, very close to 100%. And Finnish as a language is one of the most phonetic languages in the world. So there's a direct correspondence between phonetic phonetic written codes and the ability of children to achieve 100% literacy. So while we're not changing the English code, we are showing the phonetic components of the English written code to the kids. And so that's why they're learning how to read in 12 hours. And that's why we feel that universal literacy is achievable. So yeah, my fundamental belief is that we need to upskill these kids into literacy, and that should be a huge, if not the primary focus, moving forward. And that's what we're trying to do.
Awesome. Very true. What challenges have you faced in your mission during the time of COVID?
Yeah, it's funny because in a way, the universe kind of came together for us because COVID put a lot of people at home, put a lot of people in situations where they had a lot of free time to volunteer. So it just happened to coincide. We had already been a virtual organization. As I mentioned, in 2012, we went nationwide with our virtual, training of our tutors. And so we were used to Slack, we were used to Zoom, we were used to Google shared folders. And so it made a lot of sense for us, and we were able to recruit a lot of very talented professionals to work on the app through the pandemic, through the worst of the pandemic. And I really feel like it gave everyone a sense of hope and a place to be and a thing to do. And it just actually happened to work out. So COVID for us was not a challenge as much as sort of a blessing of having that talent pool that we could pull from.
Very, very rightly put. Awesome. So last question, what would be your message to the world government and international NGOs or stakeholders working towards achieving the goals of SDG 4.1 on achieving universal foundational literacy and numeracy for all?
Sure. I mean, when I was tutoring, so when we had our tutoring program, I also tutored. So I tutored hundreds of kids. We had a lot of ESL kids learning English, recent migrants to the U.S., third, fourth, fifth graders who couldn't add 2 dimes in a nickel. They couldn't do basic math. In second grade and third grade, math transitions to word problems. So those kids couldn't read their own homework and the word problems. So I believe that, the challenge of teaching millions of kids to read is now very accessible. So we have a program that can teach these kids to read in 12 hours, that will allow them to then progress in their math and all other subjects. There's a saying that up until third grade, we learn to read, and then after that, we read to learn. So our goal is to get all these kids reading, and then they can use those skills to learn all the other subjects and move on to secondary and further education. So it's within reach, and we believe that we can pull together with our benevolent hurricane and a cause-centric vortical flow structure that we are with the phonetics decoding app in the middle of it. We feel that we can pull together, continue to pull together organizations from around the world that have a similar mission and are focused on the same cause. And I think there are just more and more people we're seeing who are really focused on this cause. And our message is it's only 12 hours away and it's free. So, and it's downloadable and can go anywhere in the world. And we're seeing downloads all over the world. So there's no reason, there's nothing standing in the way anymore. It should all happen now.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing with this whole thing with us. And I really hope that more and more people all over the world are able to download this and get the best going, and they become literate within 12 hours. It has been such a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you
Thank,
so much for being with us. Thank you, audience, and good night. Thank you.
thank you.